This story takes us into the dark depths of a harsh world, where the strong prey on the weak, and survival is a cruel privilege not granted to all. A young girl named Lily, innocent and full of hope, becomes a tragic victim of greed and cruelty. One evening, as her parents dressed to go out, she innocently tugged at her father's sleeve and asked, "Papa, Mama, where are you going? Can I come with you?" Her father, irritated, yelled, "Be quiet, Lily. Stay home." He roughly pushed her aside, ignoring her teary eyes. Turning to his wife, he said with a smirk, "Hey, where should we go tonight?" "Let's try that new tavern that just opened," her mother replied nonchalantly, not sparing Lily a second glance. They left without looking back, leaving Lily crying and alone in the cold, dark house. She waited and waited for their return, clutching her knees as the night deepened. Little did she know, her nightmare was just beginning. The next day, Lily's world shattered. She woke up to a cold, heavy chain around her neck and a stranger's voice growling above her. "From today, I am your new master," the man said with a cruel grin. "Don't worry, little girl. I'll take good care of you." Confused and terrified, Lily tugged desperately at the chain, her small hands trembling. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she cried, "Papa, Mama, please don't leave me. Come back." But her parents were nowhere to be found. In the distance, her father chuckled, counting the money he had received for selling her. "Look at this," he said, showing the bills to Lily's mother. "This will last us a long time. We'll have so much fun." Her mother smiled greedily, her heartless laugh echoing as they walked away, abandoning their daughter to a fate worse than death. The man who now owned Lily didn't waste time showing her the cruelty of her new life. He heated an iron rod until it glowed red, then pressed it into Lily's back, branding her with a mark that burned deep into her skin. Lily screamed in pain, her small body convulsing. From now on, the man sneered, "You're mine. You're nothing but a slave. Remember that. You will never be free." Through her sobs, Lily whispered, "What does freedom mean? I don't know, but I'm sure it's something I will never have." Years passed, and Lily's suffering continued. One day, as she scrubbed the floor of her master's house, the man threw a bucket of water at her. "Stupid girl," he yelled. "Didn't I tell you to clean properly? Before coming," he yelled, "No, you are a worthless slave who does nothing right. You can't even do that." He harshly spoke about the situation, feeling her humiliated. "Forgive me," she says, the man shouted on her, "Come on, quickly clean all of this by noon," he demanded. The girl, lifeless, said, "Forgive me," as she quickly began cleaning. "You're useless." She quickly cleaned it, but then that man's gaze fell on the girl's chest. Her destiny started to worsen. He said, "You are a slave. Who told you that you can wear clothes? Take them off. These clothes are wasted on you because of your unemployment. Hurry up." The girl was completely lifeless and in shock. Crying, she said, "Okay," and began to remove her clothes. As she did, the man added, "As long as my mark is on your back, you will be nowhere. You can't run away. You're mine. You should be thankful for that." Saying this, he advanced on the girl. The girl cried and said, "Thank you very much, thank you," while she knew what that man had done to her. How disgusting! The scene shifted to a road bridge where the same girl was pulling a cart. The cart was very heavy, filled with numerous things, and the man was sitting in it. He shouted and hit her with a whip, saying, "Come on, can't you do this faster? If it continues like this, we won't be able to wait for the right time, and we won't reach the market in time." As they crossed an old wooden bridge, the planks began to creak and groan. The ropes supporting the bridge snapped one by one, and suddenly, the entire structure began to collapse. Both were about to fall, but the man shouted, "Why did you stop at this bridge? Run away quickly." However, the bridge was about to break, and it collapsed completely. Both of them fell. As they fell, it seemed the girl hit the bridge and managed to grab the corner of it. The man also caught it. He muttered, "Damn it, am I going to die like this?" He placed his foot where the girl was holding onto the bridge, pressing her hand painfully. The girl's hand was crushed, and she thought to herself as she fell, "Am I going to die?" There was no purpose left in her life. Lily closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. Am I going to die like this? A powerful gust of wind whooshed past her. Lily opened her eyes to see a massive dragon descending from the sky. As it descended to catch her, the dragon positioned itself beneath her. She fell into its embrace, her exhaustion causing her to lose consciousness. The dragon looked at her carefully, then the dragon soared high above the shattered bridge and flew toward a beautiful garden surrounding a grand mansion. Gently, it descended into the garden, setting Lily down on the soft grass before transforming into a tall, imposing man with piercing eyes. He knelt beside her, concern etched on his face. "I'm so glad I arrived in time," the man said softly. "You're safe now, Lily." For the first time in years, Lily felt something unfamiliar, hope. As Lily found herself enveloped in warmth, a sensation she hadn't felt in what seemed like an eternity, her mind teetered between consciousness and a dreamlike haze. For a brief moment, she wondered if this was heaven. A soft, radiant light glimmered around her, and her eyes fluttered open, though her vision was still blurry. She felt a presence, strong, protective, and oddly familiar. Slowly, the haze lifted, and she made out the figure of a man holding her with care. His expression was soft, almost relieved, and his voice was deep but gentle as he spoke. Thank goodness he made it in time. The sound of her name startled her. Her mind raced. Who is he? Why does he know my name? Is someone here with me? As if reading her confusion, the man smiled, his laugh carrying a warmth that seemed to dispel the lingering shadows in her heart. Are you all right? He asked, tilting his head slightly to meet her gaze. Lily, still trapped between fear and reality, struggled to form words. Her lips parted slightly, and in a barely audible whisper, she asked, Who are you? The man's expression softened further, his golden eyes glimmering with an emotion she couldn't quite name. I've been searching for you, he said quietly, almost as though speaking to himself. For so long. Her heart raced at his words, her mind spinning. Searching for me? Before she could process his answer, a cold, dark fear crept into her chest. She glanced at him more carefully and realized something that made her tremble. He was unclothed, his form covered only by the faint shimmer of scales and light where his dragon form had been moments before. Lily recoiled slightly in his arms, her memories dragging her back to the countless nights of torment she had endured. Her thoughts spiraled to the cruel man who had hurt her, who had claimed her as his property, who had taken her dignity and crushed her hope. Is this man going to hurt me too? The thought clawed at her mind, tightening the grip of fear in her chest, until she suddenly fainted in his arms, causing him to call out her name, Lily, in surprise. The Grand Duke, known for his composed demeanor, rubbed his forehead in dismay, his piercing gaze dark with anger. This is terrible, he muttered, pacing in the lavishly decorated hall. Turning to a maid nearby, he said, I didn't mean to frighten her like that. She saw me in my dragon form, and I startled her so badly. She was terrified. The maid, Mary, bowed her head in sympathy. It's not surprising, Your Grace, she said softly. The young lady, it seems life has not been kind to her thus far. The Duke halted in his steps and turned sharply toward Mary. You mean that man from the bridge, he said, his voice low and simmering with rage. Mary hesitated, her lips trembling as she nodded. Yes, Your Grace. When I went to check on her, I saw countless wounds and bruises covering her body. She paused, her voice shaking, taken advantage of her and vented all his anger on her small, fragile body. The Duke clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white, the veins in his arms bulging. His jaw tightened, and his usually calm demeanor dissolved into fury. That heartless coward, he growled, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. His green eyes darkened, and a dangerous, otherworldly blue aura began to emanate from him. The air in the room turned heavy as his draconic power surged to the surface. The Duke's words were laced with venom, his anger flaring hotter with each passing second. His scales started to form, his sharp nails extending as his dragon form threatened to take over completely. Your Grace! Mary gasped, stepping back as the blue aura caused furniture to rattle and papers to fly across the room. Please calm yourself. If you let your anger consume you, you'll frighten the young lady again. The Duke froze, Mary's words piercing through the haze of his rage. His glowing dragon eyes dimmed as he thought of Lily, small, trembling, and fragile in his arms. With a deep breath, he willed himself back into his human form, the scales receding and his aura calming. Mary let out a relieved sigh. "Your Grace, your anger is justified, but please, be mindful. The young lady has already been through so much." The Duke exhaled slowly, his fists still clenched but his emotions now under control. "You're right, Mary," he said, his voice quieter now. "I let my emotions get the better of me." As Mary's mood darkened, she thought about Ortiz's struggles with controlling his emotions. When his feelings overwhelmed him, it was said to be the red dragon blood he had inherited from his father. Without realizing it, he would begin to shift into his draconic form, his transformation triggered by his inner turmoil. Mary reflected on the past. "Now that I think about it," she mused. Her memories wandered to the time when Ortiz's mother had passed away. He remembered the day his mother had died, her weak body, her fading smile, and the anger that had consumed him as a child. He had lost control then, too, his draconic nature roaring to life in his grief. Shaking off the memory, the Duke straightened his posture. "At any rate, I want to check on Lily. I need to ensure she's resting and recovering," he said firmly. In the guest room where Lily rested, she was far from peace. Though her body lay still, her mind was trapped in a storm of nightmares. In her dream, she stood before the cruel man who had branded her, his shadow looming over her. He sneered at her, his voice venomous as he grabbed her by the collar. "How dare a slave like you talk back to me?" he hissed. Lily, trembling, stammered, "I'm sorry. I was feeling ill." Her voice was barely audible, but the man's expression only grew darker. "Feeling ill?" he mocked. "As if I care how you feel." With a growl, the man raised his hand and slapped her hard across the face. Lily stumbled but didn't cry out. She had learned long ago that showing pain only made things worse. Her cheek throbbed, but she bit her lip and whispered, "I'm sorry." The man wasn't done. He slapped her again, harder this time, his hand leaving a searing red mark on her face. "Keep apologizing. That's all you're good for," he spat. Blood dripped from the corner of her mouth as Lily endured the blows, her tears falling silently. Her mind screamed for mercy, but she dared not speak again. Suddenly, the nightmare began to shift. The man's face faded into darkness, and Lily found herself falling into a void. She heard his voice echoing around her, "You'll always be a slave, always mine." Lily jolted awake, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The last thing she remembered was falling from the bridge, thinking it was the end. A soft voice startled her. "Are you all right, my lady?" Lily turned sharply, her hands clutching the blanket. Standing near the door was a kind-looking maid named Mary, her expression filled with concern. Lily flinched slightly at her presence, unsure of her surroundings or what to expect. "Where am I?" she asked in a small voice, her fear evident. Mary smiled gently. "You're in the Duke's estate, my lady. You were rescued by His Grace after the incident on the bridge." Lily's mind reeled. The Duke's estate? She looked down at her hands, trembling slightly. The bridge, the fall, the pain, and then, the dragon. Her memories were fragmented, but she vaguely recalled a figure, someone strong, someone who caught her before she could hit the ground. As her thoughts swirled, a tall figure stepped into the room. It was the Duke, Ortiz, standing beside Mary. His presence filled the room with quiet authority, but his expression was far from intimidating. Instead, there was a certain gentleness in his eyes as he looked at Lily. Lily grew fearful as she recalled a previous moment when she had seen him without clothes. The Duke spoke softly, his voice deep but calm. "I owe you an apology for the state in which you first saw me. It wasn't my intention to frighten you." He paused, his gaze lowering. "I know I must have startled you terribly. I'm sorry." Lily's heart raced. She could hardly comprehend the situation. The Duke, the man standing before her, was the dragon who had saved her? Her thoughts were jumbled, and her instincts told her to be cautious. Yet, there was something in his tone, something genuine, that made her pause. The Duke stepped closer but hesitated, maintaining a respectful distance. "May I come closer?" he asked, his tone careful, as if afraid of scaring her further. Lily blinked, unsure of how to respond. She gave a small nod, her voice barely above a whisper. Oh, okay. Ortiz moved forward slowly, lowering himself to her level as he knelt by her bedside. Thank you, he said sincerely. Allow me to introduce myself properly. I am Ortiz, the Duke and Captain of the Royal Knights. He paused, giving her a small, reassuring smile. May I know your name? Lily hesitated, her voice faltering as she answered, My name is Lily. Ortiz repeated her name softly, as if committing it to memory. Lily. That's a beautiful name. As he spoke, he observed her closely. He could see just how embarrassed she was. I'm sure she hasn't been fed nearly enough, he thought. She must have suffered more than he could possibly imagine. Just then, a loud growl broke the quiet. Lily's face flushed in embarrassment as she realized it was her stomach. Ortiz chuckled lightly, the sound warm and unthreatening. It seems you're hungry. Is there anything in particular you'd like to eat? Lily blinked in confusion. The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her what she wanted to eat. She hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Ortiz added gently, Feel free to ask for anything, Lily. I don't mind. The word free echoed in her mind, and a dark shadow passed over her face. She clenched her hands tightly. Her voice wavered as she asked, Am I really free? Tears threatened to fall as she thought back to the man who had branded her, who had called her his property, who had told her she would never escape. Lily didn't know how to respond. The concept felt so foreign to her, so distant. She hesitated before finally whispering, warm soup. Can I have that? Ortiz smiled and stood. Of course. I'll have it prepared immediately. A short while later, Lily sat at a table in a small but cozy dining room. A bowl of steaming soup was placed in front of her, and she stared at it, wide-eyed. The rich aroma filled her senses, and for a moment, she was too stunned to move. Ortiz watched her from across the table, his expression soft. I hope it's to your liking, he said. Lily blinked, her hands trembling as she picked up the spoon. She took a small sip, and her eyes widened in astonishment. The warmth of the soup spread through her body, comforting and unfamiliar. She hadn't tasted anything like this before. This is for me, she whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. She looked up at Ortiz, her eyes glistening with tears. Of course, Ortiz replied. You can have as much as you'd like. Lily took another sip, her hands shaking slightly. Tears began to stream down her face as she mumbled, It's warm and full. Her mind drifted back to her past, her life as a slave, where she was fed scraps barely fit for consumption. She remembered walking through the market one day, seeing a family enjoying a meal together. They had soup, something that seemed so simple and ordinary. She had stared at them, thinking, That's something I'll never have. And now, here she was, sitting at a table, eating soup made just for her. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of something she hadn't dared to hope for, kindness. Lily sat at the large dining table, munching quietly on the meal before her. It was her third day at the Duke's mansion, and every meal seemed like a dream, warm, plentiful, and served just for her. She had never known this kind of kindness. Ortiz watched her from across the table, a small smile playing on his lips. Her tiny frame contrasted with her large bites, and her earnest focus on her food made him chuckle softly to himself. She has such a small mouth, but she takes such big bites, she's so cute, he thought. As Lily wonders why he's so happy. You can have as much bread and dessert as you like, Ortiz said gently, his voice carrying a tone of warmth. Lily blinked up at him, slightly startled, as if the concept of being allowed to eat as much as she wanted was entirely foreign to her. As much as I like, she repeated in a soft, almost disbelieving voice. At that moment, Mary, the maid, stepped forward and placed a tray of cookies on the table in front of Lily. Here you go, my lady, Mary said with a kind smile. Lily hesitated for a moment, staring at the cookies. She had never seen such beautifully baked treats before. Her small hand slowly reached out and picked up a cookie. She turned it over in her hand, examining its perfect shape, before taking a tentative bite. Her eyes widened in astonishment as the sweet, buttery flavor filled her mouth. She couldn't hold back a small hum of delight. She nibbled on the cookie with a shy smile, savoring each bite. A fleeting thought crossed her mind. Is this what happiness feels like? Ortiz observed her closely, noticing her reaction. Do you like it? He asked, his voice filled with quiet amusement. As she glanced at Ortiz, she couldn't help but think about how kind he was being to her. The man she once knew, the cruel, violent man who branded her and treated her as less than human, was nothing like this. Why is he being so kind to me? She wondered. Ortiz noticed her thoughtful expression and leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table. Lily, he said, his voice steady but gentle, I believe you're recovering well. Shall we talk for a bit? Talk, about what? She asked cautiously. Do you remember when you fell from the cliff? Ortiz asked, his gaze steady but not pressing. Lily froze for a moment, the cookie lowering from her lips as her memories stirred. The terrifying fall from the bridge flashed through her mind, the feeling of helplessness, the thought that her life was about to end. She blinked and looked at Ortiz, realizing that he must have been the one who saved her. Her cheeks turned pink as she remembered waking up in his arms, unclothed and vulnerable. You were the one who saved me, she said softly, more of a statement than a question. Ortiz smiled gently. Yes, I was fortunate to be there in time. Lily, you have two choices now, he said, his tone serious but kind. The first is to return to the life you came from, if that is what you wish. His words hung heavily in the air as Lily's eyes widened, her heart sinking. Go back? Back to that life of pain and suffering? Back to being a slave. Ortiz noticed the panic flickering in her eyes and added, but there's also another option. You can stay here. You're free to live as you wish, for as long as you want. Lily stared at him in disbelief. Free, she repeated, the word feeling foreign and heavy on her tongue. She had heard that word before but never believed it applied to her. Her whole life, she had been told she was a slave, that she would never be free, that her life belonged to her master. I have to go back to my master, back to that life. As Ortiz flinched, he ordered Mary to prepare his special meal for Lily, hoping to ease her panic. Mary, the maid, handed her a warm meal. This is his favorite dish, Mary said. Ortiz asked her to try it, his eyes soft with kindness. Tentatively, Lily picked up the bowl and took a bite. She was astonished by the flavor. The scent alone had been captivating, but the taste was beyond anything she had ever experienced. Seeing her reaction, Ortiz asked, Do you like it? Fraught with doubt, Lily hesitated. Is he just being kind because he doesn't know I'm a slave? She wondered. Gathering her courage, she said, I'm just a slave. You don't have to treat me like this. Ortiz's expression didn't falter. I know, he replied calmly, surprising Lily. Her mind raced, wondering why he wasn't bothered. Does it really not matter to him? I want to do things like this for you, Ortiz said with a sincerity that startled her. You should do as you like. His words struck a chord within Lily. It was the first time someone had told her that her desires mattered. She looked at him, unsure of how to respond. Why is he being so kind to me? What does he want? Fear crept into her heart as she wrestled with her emotions. Lily, still overwhelmed, hesitated before quietly saying that she wanted to stay here. Ortiz's face lit up with happiness at her words, but his expression faltered when she added, But I can't stay here forever. Confused, Ortiz asked, Why? I have to go back to my master, Lily replied, her voice heavy with resignation. Ortiz's expression darkened as he wondered how that man could hold such control over her, even from a distance. At this, Ortiz's expression darkened momentarily. He took a deep breath, reining in his temper. He didn't want to frighten Lily, not after seeing the fear she carried with her. He had been thinking deeply about her future. She needs a purpose. A reason to stay, a reason to feel that she belongs here. He paused, his mind racing with possibilities. She could be a maid of the estate, he thought, but then quickly shook his head. No, that's too much work. He rubbed his chin, pondering further. Perhaps, a gardener? He glanced at her hands and frowned. No. I don't want her to dirty her hands with labor. Suddenly, an idea clicked in his mind, a bold, impulsive idea. Lily, Ortiz began, his voice steady yet filled with a hint of nervousness, how about, we find a reason for you to stay? A reason for us to share this life together? He paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts. What if you became my wife? Lily's eyes widened in shock, the words hitting her like a bolt of lightning. Marry him? The thought echoed in her mind, bouncing off every corner of her confusion. She blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. Did he just propose? Her heart raced as she tried to make sense of his words. As he thought, if she marries him, she can stay here forever. He was lost in happiness. Mary, who had been quietly tending to the young lady, nearly dropped the teapot in her hands. Her eyes widened as she looked at Ortiz in disbelief. Ortiz, too, was shocked by his own boldness. As he processed Lily's silence, he panicked, standing abruptly. Placing his hand over his mouth, he muttered, I'm sorry. That was foolish of me. Please forgive me. You should be free to choose for yourself. I didn't mean to pressure you. He looked away, his mind racing. What a fool I am. This is worse than not proposing at all. She must hate me now. But to his surprise, Lily's face softened into a smile. Her cheeks flushed as she said with a hint of laughter, You're really so bold to want to marry someone like me. I've never met anyone like you before. Ortiz let out a nervous laugh, feeling relief wash over him. You're laughing, he said with a grin. I knew it, laughter suits you best. His mind wandered to a moment long ago when Lily had shown him kindness. Ortiz, the dragon, lay quietly in the shadows of the ruined forest, his massive body coiled protectively as he nursed an injury. Memories surged through his mind, and one, in particular, stood out vividly. It was the moment Lily had come to him. Are you okay? You're hurt, Lily had asked softly, her voice trembling with concern. She had appeared so fragile then, standing amidst the wreckage, her kind eyes locked onto his. Ortiz had felt fear, not for himself, but for her. What if he hurt her unintentionally? What if she feared him? Lily, however, had not flinched. She stepped closer, a hesitant smile gracing her lips. Your eyes, they're beautiful, she whispered, like the sky at dusk. Ortiz had not replied, but her words had stirred something deep within him. For the first time in ages, he felt seen, not as a beast, but as something more. In the distance, the sound of voices carried through the night air. Lily's parents were drinking and laughing, their loud conversations echoing across the barren land. Her father, Shuja, spoke with a cruel edge. If I kill one of those creatures, I'll get a handsome reward. It'd be fun to hunt them down, he said, his words dripping with malice. Lily's mother chuckled. They're nothing but nuisances. If they died, the world would be better for it. Lily, hidden behind a corner, overheard their harsh words. Her small fists clenched in defiance. She couldn't understand why they were so cruel. When she approached them, her voice was timid. Is there any food? She asked hesitantly. Her mother growled, grabbing a bucket and tossing scraps onto the ground. Eat this if you're so hungry, she snapped. Lily picked up a piece of fruit from the dirt and dashed away. She couldn't bear to stay there any longer. Beneath the night sky, she clutched her meager offerings and ran back to Ortiz. When she arrived, her face lit up. I brought you something, she said cheerfully, sliding down to sit beside him. She placed the fruit and a piece of bread in front of him. It's not much, but it's all I could find. I'm sorry. Ortiz's gaze softened. He took the bread carefully and then nudged a small piece toward her. You should eat, he rumbled gently. Lily shook her head. Don't worry about me. I've already eaten plenty at home, she lied, her stomach growling faintly. Ortiz watched her in silence, a rare smile curving his lips. She had risked so much for him, and yet she seemed so carefree. He thought to himself, she doesn't remember, but we've met before. Seeing her happy brought a warmth to his heart that he had long forgotten. If she's happy, Ortiz mused quietly, then I'll smile too. Lily noticed the faint smile on his face and blushed, her cheeks turning a soft pink. She shifted closer, finding comfort in his presence. Not far away, the sound of a carriage approached. The wheels creaked as it stopped near the gates of the ruined forest. The horseman called out, "We've arrived, Lady Scarlet." A young woman stepped out gracefully, her crimson gown flowing behind her. "Scarlet," she said, introducing herself. "It's been so long since I've visited." Scarlet looked around with an air of nostalgia. "I've missed this place so much," she murmured. Nearby, a serene garden spread out, where Ortiz could see her sipping tea. Lily, too, was there, her small hands clasping a cup as she gazed at the sky. Mary stood by the window when she suddenly heard a tap at the door. The door lamps flickered, and in walked Lady Scarlet, her elegant presence lighting up the room. Lily, who was nearby, flinched at the sight of her. Scarlet's eyes softened as she noticed him and called out his name. Ortiz was astonished to see her. "Why are you here?" he asked, a hint of surprise in his voice. Scarlet smiled warmly, her eyes twinkling. "I came to see you, Ortiz." "You're looking quite handsome," she said with a playful tone. Her gaze shifted to Lily, who stood up in a panic, her eyes wide as she stared at Scarlet. Scarlet's eyes softened as she turned to Lily and spoke, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Lily. I'm Lady Scarlet, daughter of Earl Rubus." She smiled reassuringly. "I'm sorry for interrupting your meal," she added. Lily blushed, her heart pounding as she took in Scarlet's beauty. As Lily stared at Scarlet, Ortiz noticed the tension in the room. Due to some complications, Scarlet would be staying with them for a while. Ortiz placed a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder and said, "Lily, please introduce yourself." Lily was nervous, her voice shaking as she spoke. "I'm very sorry for being rude," she said, quickly adding, "My name is Lily." Scarlet's expression softened as she reached out and gently took Lily's hand. "You don't have to apologize so much," she said with a kind smile. Lily's cheeks flushed, and she looked down, embarrassed. Scarlet then said, "That's right. I brought some tea for us to enjoy together." Ortiz watched this interaction closely, his expression unreadable. Scarlet glanced at Ortiz and said, "These are a symbol of appreciation for your attendance at the upcoming ball," referring to the small gifts she had brought. Ortiz nodded, acknowledging her gesture. "You didn't have to go out of your way to bring them personally, but thank you very much." Scarlet smiled warmly as she spoke, but her tone carried a subtle air of arrogance that Lily couldn't help but notice. Lily thought about how Scarlet was so dazzling and elegant, qualities that seemed so different from herself. Ortiz, who was nearby, caught her attention with his distinguished demeanor and wondered if Scarlet had invited him because of his importance, though he was nothing like her. Lily's thoughts were interrupted when Scarlet's eyes narrowed as she gave Lily a sly smile. She reached out, taking Lily's hand in a sudden gesture and said, "Lily, let's be friends." The words left Lily in shock. As both Lily and Scarlet sat at the tea table, Scarlet spoke, "These are my favorite sweets." Lily glanced at them, then at Ortiz, who sat beside her, offering her a reassuring smile. Lily took a bite, her cheeks flushed with gratitude. "Thank you so much," she said softly. "Why did you want to be my friend?" she finally asked, her voice trembling slightly. Scarlet's eyes twinkled. "Do I need a reason?" "I just want to get to know you better," she said, her smile warm but cryptic. "Isn't that enough?" This left Lily astounded. This is the first time I've ever made a friend, Lily thought, the only other person she had considered close being Master Macbeth. Can I really become her friend? The memory of Ortiz's words echoed in her mind, "Do what makes you happy." With that thought, Lily felt a spark of hope. Scarlet's smile grew, and a sense of happiness settled over the table. They were becoming friends, despite the doubts that lingered. But as Scarlet watched Lily, her thoughts were not as innocent. She's just a commoner who doesn't even know how to curse properly. How could I ever befriend someone like her? Meanwhile, in a grand palace, the doors creaked open as Ortiz, in his uniform, stood tall. His servant greeted him, "Welcome back, Captain." Ortiz nodded, his expression serious. "How was your time away?" the servant asked. Ortiz replied, "It was refreshing. Thanks to your hard work, I was able to spend time with Lily, and she's even making friends." He hesitated for a moment, then added, "I'm not very good at dealing with Lady Scarlet." The servant handed Ortiz a report. Ortiz looked it over, noting the details with a frown. "This is even more elaborate than usual," he said, his voice darkening.
The servant replied cautiously, "It's for the upcoming event."
After all, it's only natural that preparations are grand when nobles will be present. As he informed Ortiz, "Beast is rising, they should kill them all."
Ortiz's mind clouded with dark thoughts. Ortiz thought, what would happen if they know he was also a beast? What would they think if they knew the truth?
What would Lily think of me? Back in the cozy room, Mary's eyes lit up as she gazed at Lily. "Your gown looks wonderful," she said.
Lily blushed and smiled.
"Thank you very much," she said softly. Ortiz, who stood nearby, took a moment to appreciate her. "You look very beautiful," he said, his voice low, causing a faint blush to rise on his cheeks. She truly is beautiful, he thought, a mix of pride and admiration in his eyes. As Ortiz clearly saw, Lily was so happy to be wearing a dress for the first time. However, she seemed a bit hesitant and nervously brought her small hands up to touch her rosy red cheeks. When he looked into her bright eyes, he was astonished. Ortiz thought she was so cute. Mary, who had been calling out his name, snapped him out of his daydream. "Mary, I'll be heading to work now." "Enjoy yourself too," Ortiz said. Lily watched him leave and wondered if she would have been happy in any regular clothes, as long as her outfit didn't embarrass Lady Scarlet. But the dress prepared for her was so beautiful and high quality. As Lily caught up with Ortiz, he listened to her speak. Nervously, she said, "Thank you," and with a happy smile, she added that she liked the dress very much. Ortiz's astonishment was clear, and he smiled back at her. "Of course," he replied. Ahead, they could see a grand mansion surrounded by a bright, shining garden. Lily wondered if this was Lady Scarlet's home. It looked like a castle. She thought, thanks to Sir Ortiz and Mary, I finally feel well enough to go outside. I'm so grateful to them. Lily recalled a moment when Sir Ortiz had been especially kind, offering her food and telling her she should eat more. As Lily sat in the garden on a chair, Scarlet appeared, sparkling and calling out Lily's name. "Welcome to my home," she said warmly. Lily thanked her for the invitation, but Scarlet chuckled and said, "That won't do at all, Miss Lily. When greeting a noble in their home, you must stand from your chair." Lily, a little embarrassed, said, "Sorry." Scarlet laughed and said, "Well, it can't be helped. You're a commoner, after all. There's no need to be embarrassed about not knowing noble customs." She then asked, "Shall we have tea?" Lily, feeling shy, nodded as Scarlet sat and poured her some tea. Scarlet then asked, "By the way, is that dress something Sir Ortiz gave you?" Lily smiled and said, "Yes, he was very considerate." Scarlet sighed, "Is that so? I'm so jealous. Can I ask you more about what you mentioned before?" Scarlet continued. "Before? Do you mean the story of when Ortiz met the captain of the knights?" "Yes," Lily responded. Scarlet teased, "I heard that you like him, Miss Lily." Lily's face flushed. "It's not like that. I just want to know him better. Why is he so kind to me? Why does he seem so happy around me? If I understand him more, maybe I'll finally know why." Scarlet smiled knowingly. "In that case, Miss Lily, why don't you attend the ball?" She winked. "You'll see a completely new side of Ortiz. For example, you'll see how he dances." Lily hesitated. "I don't know anything about balls or how to dance. I'll just cause a problem." Scarlet's smile faded a bit as she noticed Lily's conflicted expression. Why is she so hesitant? Scarlet thought. "It's fine if you don't want to go," Scarlet said with a hint of disappointment in her voice. As the scene shifts, we can see some people standing and chatting with each other. Among them, J.E. Ortiz is engaged in a fight with another knight. Ortiz, with his darkened expression, swings his hand with great force, breaking the other knight's sword. The impact throws the knight to the ground. The crowd chants loudly in awe. The knight, defeated, says, "There is no match for Ortiz." Ortiz, extending a hand to the fallen knight, says humbly, "I wasn't sure I was incredibly skilled. I was simply trained regularly, and not everyone can surpass consistent practice." The knight, accepting Ortiz's hand, replies, "That reminds me of a rumor going around.
Ortiz, curious, asks, a rumor?
The knight explains, there's talk about Lady Lily wanting to attend the ball, but she's conflicted. The scene shifts to Lily. She is speaking with someone, insisting, I'm not sure I can attend the ball. Lily's face reddens with fear as she continues, I never agreed to go. In her mind, Lily thinks about Lady Scarlet and the consequences of mistakes. Memories of her previous life, where she was punished severely by her master, make her tremble with fear. Ortiz notices her hesitation and approaches her.
If you don't want to go, you don't have to, he says gently.
Lily, still fearful, replies, but I don't want to bring shame to your name. Ortiz shakes his head and says, the most important thing is for you to choose what you want to do, Lily.
This makes Lily pause. What do I want to do, she wonders. A childhood memory surfaces in her mind. As a child, she had read a fairy tale about a king and a princess meeting at a grand ball. She had thought it was so beautiful and sparkly, wishing she could attend such an event one day. But as a slave back then, she had believed such dreams were impossible. Clutching the memory close, Lily gathers her courage and says, I want to attend the ball. Ortiz smiles warmly. Then I will give you all my support. Mary, overhearing this, laughs lightly. Lily beams with happiness, her heart filling with determination. The next day, Lily is standing in an upright posture as Ortiz introduces her to a new etiquette teacher, Professor Eliza. Eliza, a poised and strict woman, says, I will not be lenient with you. Please ensure you are prepared. Lily nods earnestly. Thank you very much for instructing me, she says. Eliza begins Lily's lessons on noble behavior. One day, Eliza teaches her how to use a napkin, but Lily, unfamiliar with royal customs, accidentally uses the napkin to cover her face, causing a moment of surprise. In another instance, Lily picks up bread with her hands, which Eliza points out is improper. However, over time, Lily begins to grasp the lessons, and Eliza even laughs lightly when Lily performs an action correctly. This encourages Lily, who thinks, this is my first time learning such things, but everything feels so new and exciting. During her training, Lily encounters Scarlet, who remarks, You like your studies? That's a very unique opinion. Lily asks curiously, Really? Scarlet nods. Most people hate their lessons. But you're not like everyone else, Miss Lily. Lily blushes slightly. Scarlet continues, How about your dance lessons? Lily hesitates. We're still searching for a female instructor. Scarlet, intrigued, asks, Why? Lily, trembling slightly, admits, I'm afraid of men. Scarlet's expression softens. I see. I hope you find someone to help you. As Scarlet boards her carriage, she pauses and says, I know who can be your dance instructor. It may be Lady Beckett, Scarlet mused thoughtfully. Maid nodded in agreement. It's impressive that you figured it out so quickly. Scarlet shrugged with a smirk. No, it was simple. In terms of noble etiquette, Lady Beckett is among the few who are tolerant enough to agree to instruct a commoner. Maid looked astonished. You're truly remarkable, Miss Scarlet. Scarlet gave a sly, almost mischievous smile. I have a plan, she said, her tone carrying a hint of mischief. She instructed her maid to inform Lady Beckett that Miss Lily had supposedly found someone else to be her dance instructor. Scarlet chuckled to herself, clearly amused by her own cunning strategy. Meanwhile, Lily is anxious about her upcoming dance lessons. She borrows a book from her etiquette instructor, hoping to learn more, but her nerves cause her to doubt herself. What if I step on their foot? She frets. Mary, noticing Lily's distress, reassures her. Young lady, your instructor will be here soon. Are you all right? Lily nods hesitantly, inwardly telling herself, I'll be okay. As Mary spoke, she reassured Lily, You have been working very hard. I believe you'll learn how to dance in no time. She gave Lily a warm smile. Seeing Mary's smile comforted Lily, though panic still gnawed at her. Just then, a man arrived and introduced himself as her dance instructor. I am King Court, he said with a polite bow. I am looking forward to teaching you. Lily froze. Her mind raced with questions. Shouldn't the instructor be a woman, she thought. Her anxiety was evident as Court noticed her hesitation. Is something the matter? He asked. Such a distressed expression doesn't suit a beautiful young lady like you, he added, offering his hand. Lily recoiled slightly, frightened by the gesture. Mary quickly intervened, saying, "My lady, please don't feel as if you must push yourself. We can always end things here." But Lily shook her head. "I could never do something so rude," she said, forcing a smile. "I will be fine." Her words, though shaky, conveyed determination. Mary flinched slightly but offered encouragement. "Right, my lady." Mary flinched and said, "Right, she's looking forward to your lessons." The instructor smiled and added, "I never imagined I would be dancing with such a beautiful lady. I'm so glad I took this job." He continued, "Now, since this is our first lesson, shall we start with a simple dance?" Lily nodded in agreement as her dance instructor reached for her waist. "First, let me show you our basic hold," he said, positioning her hands to demonstrate. Lily's heart raced with fear. Just as Lady Scarlet said, she was complete beginner, he thought. She flinched when he spoke. "Lady Lily, take my hand," he said gently. Trembling, Lily reached out, but before she could fully grasp his hand, he took hold of hers and drew her close. "A dance can only be done with a partner," he said. As he thought, it seemed she would need to be somewhat comfortable with him, and he would have to be understanding of her as well. She managed to relax a little, but soon fear gripped her again, and she panicked. Her mind flashed to past dark memories of her master, and a wave of fear gripped her. She fainted in his arms, and he looked at her in astonishment. "Lady Lily," he called out. In the next scene, Lily lay on her bed, Ortiz by her side. As her eyes fluttered open, Ortiz asked, "Are you all right?" Lily couldn't speak at first, but Ortiz, looking remorseful, said, "I'm sorry. I asked Lady Elizabeth to be your dance instructor, but it seems the message was delivered to the wrong person." Lily's eyes filled with regret. Lily's voice was soft as she admitted, "It was my fault." Ortiz, puzzled, asked, "What do you mean?" Lily's eyes darted nervously. "All of this happened because I was afraid of men. I was so rude to the instructor," she confessed, guilt weighing on her heart. Ortiz shook his head, his expression gentle. "That's not true, and it's not your fault." Lily's eyes glistened with tears as she looked at him. "Did you leave your work to come here?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ortiz met her gaze, feeling a pang of guilt. "Yes, I did. I wanted to make sure you were all right," he said, silently regretting not confirming the details sooner. "It's all right," Lily said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'll continue taking lessons with the instructor." Before Ortiz could respond, Scarlett's voice came from behind him. As Scarlett stepped forward, "I can be Lily's instructor," she said confidently. Lily glanced at Scarlett, surprised by her sudden presence. Scarlett explained, "I heard that Miss Lily had collapsed, so I rushed over to make sure you were all right." Lily's eyes softened with gratitude. "Thank you for worrying about me," she said quietly. Ortiz's eyes met Scarlett's, seeking clarification. "You said you were willing to teach Lily how to dance," he asked. Scarlett's smile was both confident and sly. "As the proud daughter of an earl, I have full confidence in my abilities," she said, her voice low but steady. With a hint of mischief, she added, "And since Lily is my best friend, I'm more than willing to teach her." In the next scene, Lady Scarlet and Lily were dancing. Scarlet was trying to teach Lily a dance, but Lily struggled to keep up. Scarlet frowned as she watched Lily's efforts and used her foot to push Lily slightly, causing Lily to lose her balance. Just as Lily was about to fall, Scarlet gasped, "Oh my, I'm so sorry." She wondered how their legs could have gotten tangled like that. Lily, embarrassed, apologized, saying it was her fault for being so bad at dancing. Scarlet sighed, "Suppose that's right. To think you would struggle with such an elementary dance. I would be so embarrassed I'd die on the spot." Lily trembled and repeated, "I'm sorry," as she sat down on a chair, gripping her skirt in frustration. She realized she hadn't anticipated how difficult dancing would be. Scarlett raised an eyebrow and asked, "Are you out of breath already?" Lily admitted, "I have very little stamina." Scarlett looked at her with a critical eye. "I can tell you're not a dancer." "Of course, I am. I'm a noble, after all, and I've been dancing since I was a child," she said with a smirk. "Well, that's just how things are," Scarlett remarked, "because you are a commoner and so poor that maybe you never had time for things like dancing." The thought stung, as she remembered her life as a slave. The reality of her poverty had always been clear, but now it felt sharper than ever. She wondered why she felt so anxious. Scarlett's voice broke her thoughts. "Enough talking. Let's continue," she said firmly. Lily hesitated for a moment but then stood up and prepared to try again. As Lily and Scarlett practiced dancing, the evening slipped into night. Later, Lily lay on her bed, frowning as she stared at the ceiling. Her body felt heavy with exhaustion, and doubt crept into her mind. Will I ever be able to learn how to dance? She wondered, the weight of her insecurities pressing down on her. But then she shook her head, determined. I'm not inferior to anyone, she thought. I will work hard and practice. Ortiz, holding a candle, quietly opened Lily's room door and found her practicing her dance moves. He smiled at her dedication. The next day, Scarlett watched Lily dance with astonishment. Lily moved gracefully, her steps far more precise than before. Scarlett, unable to hide her surprise, asked, "Lily, how is this possible? You were struggling so much last time. How did you improve so quickly?" Lily paused mid-dance, looking at Scarlett with a modest smile. Scarlett, still in awe, exclaimed, "You were amazing. I've never seen such improvement overnight. I can't believe it. Have you ever taken steps like that before?" Scarlett asked, surprised. "You have a natural talent, Lily," she said, smiling. "You should be able to dance longer, like a regular dancer." Lily nodded, feeling a mix of pride and nervousness. "Okay," she replied, her voice slightly hesitant. Scarlett pointed to the floor and said, "Let's try a new song now." They began dancing again, and this time, Lily's fear grew as the pace picked up. Scarlett laughed, and Lily's legs trembled from the speed, causing her to stumble and fall to the floor. Scarlett stopped, concerned. "Are you all right?" she asked. "I didn't think you'd struggle this much." Lily lay on the floor, pain spreading through her body. Scarlett asked, "Are you all right already?" as she noticed Lily struggling to keep up. She commented, "I didn't think you'd have so much trouble following along." Scarlett remarked, "Suppose that song was a bit challenging for you, Lily," with a hint of sarcasm. Meanwhile, Ortiz was lost in thought about the increasing number of lame beasts. He reflected on the human casualties caused by them and how change seemed impossible. Memories of his father, Ver, surfaced, reminding him of his resolve not to harm the beasts unnecessarily. Mary then appeared, announcing, "Lady Scarlett will be returning here shortly," while Maddie added, "She'll be going home late." Ortiz asked, "Is it already that time?" Determined, he thought to himself, "I must make sure to see her off before she leaves." Scarlett and Lily were chatting when Ortiz arrived and greeted them. Scarlett's cheeks turned pink upon seeing him. "Oh, Ortiz. I didn't expect to see you here," she said with a shy smile. "I missed you," she added, attempting to mask her flustered state. As Scarlett playfully nudged Lily, trying to make her move along, the push caused Lily to lose her balance. She stumbled and began to fall down the stairs. Scarlett gasped in shock, and everything seemed to slow down as Lily braced for the impact. As Lily closed her eyes, bracing for the impact of the fall, Ortiz swiftly caught her in time. "I'm so glad you're safe," he said, his voice filled with relief. Lily, trembling, whispered, "I'm sorry," as tears welled up in her eyes. Ortiz quickly noticed her swollen foot and asked with concern, "Why is your foot like this? Did something happen?" Lily hesitated before answering, "It was my mistake. I pushed myself too hard." Ortiz's expression darkened. Scarlett, observing the situation, chimed in, "What happened here? I can't believe this. Did you both really fall from the stairs? Are you injured?" Ortiz looked at Lily's foot carefully and replied, "Her ankle is twisted, and the swelling is severe." Scarlett gave an awkward smile, trying to deflect. "What are you talking about? I didn't realize." Ortiz interrupted firmly, "The swelling is terrible, and it shows she overexerted herself. As her instructor, you were responsible for guiding her better." "Am I wrong?" Lady Scarlett hesitated, her face clouded with uncertainty. "I didn't realize," she stammered, her usual confidence faltering. Ortiz's gaze didn't waver. "If that's the case, then I suppose it was an oversight," he replied, his tone growing colder. He stepped closer, gently lifting Lily into his arms as she winced from the pain in her swollen ankle. "Oh, and one more thing," Ortiz added, turning his piercing gaze back to Scarlett. "If I find out you've lied to me about this, know that I won't take it lightly, not even for you." Scarlett's face flushed, a mix of frustration and embarrassment overtaking her usual composure. She clenched her fists but said nothing, her fiery temper momentarily subdued. Ortiz looked down at Lily, who was trembling slightly, then turned back to Scarlett with a curt nod. "Now, if you'll excuse us, please have a safe trip home." Without waiting for a response, he carried Lily away, leaving Scarlett to stew in her emotions. As Lily insisted, "I can work on my own," Ortiz shook his head and replied, "No, I'll take you back to your room." Ortiz gently reminded her, "You should avoid putting weight on your ankle," as he placed a meal tray on the nearby table. "I brought some food for you," he said softly. Lily lowered her gaze and murmured, "I'm sorry. I've caused so much trouble." She paused, then added, "It's my fault for twisting my ankle in the first place." Ortiz frowned, crouching down to meet her eyes. "Why do you think that?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Lily hesitated, then confessed, "Because I'm useless. After all, I was a slave once. My master, my parents, they sold me when I was just a child. Everything that happens is because I'm worthless." Her voice broke as tears began to stream down her face. Ortiz's heart clenched at her words. Seeing her cry, he thought to himself, "If only I had been there to save her earlier, maybe she wouldn't have suffered so much." "Lily," he said gently, "listen to me. No normal parents would ever sell their child. That wasn't your fault." He took a deep breath, his expression darkening as he continued, "Your master, Macpath, was violent because of his own anger issues. No decent person would hurt someone else like that. It wasn't your fault." "But if," Lily started, her voice trembling, "if I made a mistake, if I wasn't good enough." Ortiz interrupted her firmly, "Let me ask you something. If a maid in your house were late in finishing a task, would you hit her for it?" Lily's eyes widened as she quickly responded, "Of course not." "Exactly," Ortiz said, his tone softening. "You've done nothing wrong, Lily." Overcome with emotion, Lily began to cry even harder, her tears soaking her hands. Ortiz stayed by her side, silently offering his support as she released the pain she had carried for so long. As Lily's tears streamed down her face, her voice cracked with anguish. "I've always just wanted someone to tell me it wasn't her fault." She convinced herself it was, because if it wasn't, she doesn't think she could have endured it. Ortiz's eyes softened as he looked at her trembling figure. "You've done nothing wrong," he said firmly. "The truth is, you just needed someone to tell you the truth. You needed someone to tell you that you are not to blame." Lily's sobs deepened as she whispered, "I just wanted someone to hold me gently instead of pushing me away. I wanted someone to pat my head like my parents did. I wanted to be loved," her small form shaking with the force of her tears. Ortiz knelt beside her, his presence steady. "You are not someone's property," he said gently, his voice unwavering. "You're a human being worthy of kindness, of care, of love. Cry all you need to. There's no one here who will scold you for it." His words felt like a salve to her wounded heart. For the first time, Lily let herself grieve without fear. Her tears slowed eventually, and exhaustion overtook her. She drifted off into sleep, her sobs softening into peaceful breaths. When Lily awoke, she rubbed her eyes and looked around, still groggy from sleep. "Did I cry myself to sleep?" she murmured to herself, feeling a faint twinge of embarrassment. "I wonder, did I bother him?"
Her thoughts lingered on Ortiz, but she noticed she felt strangely lighter. She took a deep breath and sat up. I should thank him, she resolved, the corners of her lips curving up slightly. Later, in the kitchen, Mary was busy preparing food when the sound of footsteps caught her attention. She turned to see Lily hesitating by the doorway. Ah, Miss Lily, Mary said warmly. Are you searching for something? Do you know where Ortiz is? Lily asked, looking around nervously. Sir Ortiz has already left for work. Did you need to speak with him? Lily nodded. I wanted to thank him for yesterday, she said softly, lowering her gaze. But now that she thinks about it, she's not even sure how to show my appreciation. Mary thought for a moment before offering a suggestion. In that case, how about you prepare some food for him? A heartfelt meal would certainly convey your thanks. Lily blinked in surprise at the idea but nodded. I'll try, she said earnestly, stepping into the kitchen. As Lily worked in the kitchen, Mary watched her with an approving eye. You're quite skilled at this, Mary commented. Lily smiled faintly, her hands deftly chopping and mixing. I had to cook every day before, it was never something she enjoyed back then, she admitted. But now she guesses it feels nice to do it this way. It feels purposeful. Mary nodded, her tone encouraging. I'm sure Sir Ortiz will be grateful for your effort. Lily hesitated for a moment, her lips twitching into a shy smile. I hope so, she murmured. When Ortiz returned later that day, his eyes widened in shock as Lily presented him with a beautifully prepared meal. He sat down, taking his first bite, and froze. Lily, are you planning to become a royal chef by any chance? Ortiz stammered, his face flushing with astonishment. Lily tilted her head, confused by his reaction. No, she said quietly, blushing at his praise. Mary, watching from the side, chuckled at how flustered Ortiz was. He turned back to his plate, taking another bite. This is incredible, he exclaimed. It's so delicious. Lily's cheeks turned red, but her heart swelled with pride. She fidgeted slightly before managing to say, Thank you very much. You've helped me so much. I just wanted to do something to thank you in return. Ortiz looked at her, smiling softly. Don't worry about it. Everything I've done for you, I've done because I wanted to. You don't owe me anything. Lily nodded, feeling warmth bloom in her chest. After a moment, she hesitated and spoke again, her voice quieter this time. Ortiz, about the ball, he noticed her reluctance. Do you want to attend the ball, Lily? He asked gently. Lily nodded, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Ortiz leaned back in his chair and smiled reassuringly. What about your dance lessons? Will you continue learning from Lady Charlotte? Lily faltered, her lips parting but no words coming out. She didn't have an answer. Ortiz saw her hesitance and leaned forward. Lily, you should be more honest with yourself, he said kindly. Everyone has people they find difficult to deal with. If you don't like Lady Charlotte, that's okay. You can find someone who makes you feel more comfortable. Ortiz's words struck a chord in Lily's heart. As Ortiz asked, Do you find Lady Scarlet difficult, Lily? Lily's hands trembled slightly as she thought of Lady Scarlet. She didn't dislike her, yet she couldn't fully understand the feelings of uncertainty that arose whenever she was around her. After a brief hesitation, Lily whispered, I might find her a little difficult to deal with. Ortiz gave a small nod, his tone understanding. I understand completely. In that case, once your ankle has fully healed, I'll find you a new dance instructor. He gave her an encouraging smile. Let's see how about I teach you to dance instead. Lily looked at him in shock. You would teach me? Ortiz chuckled gently and added, Only if you agree, of course. If that's not something you're comfortable with, Mary can teach you instead. Or, we could ask Professor Elizabeth for help as well. Lily fell silent for a moment, her emotions swirling. Up until now, she was always alone, she thought. She had no one to help her, to encourage her, to lean on. But she's not alone anymore, is she? With finally, a radiant smile spread across Lily's face as she looked up at Ortiz and said with confidence, "Please teach me." Ortiz's expression softened, and a warmth filled the space between them. "All right, then it's settled," he said, pleased with her answer. In another scene, the focus shifted to a dimly lit room, where a man sat at a desk, staring at a piece of parchment with trembling hands. "What the hell?" he murmured under his breath. "I thought she was dead." He clutched the letter, a disbelieving smile creeping across his face. "Lily is still alive." Meanwhile, Lily found herself walking through a lively marketplace, filled with the hum of voices and the vibrant energy of passing merchants and customers. She gazed curiously at the clothing displayed in one of the shops, running her fingers over the fine fabric. Holding up a dress, she turned to Ortiz, who stood nearby. "What do you think of this one?" she asked with a slight blush. Shopkeeper smiled and chimed in, "This is one of our newest designs, my lady. It's both elegant and unique, perfect for a ball." Ortiz inspected the dress with an appraising glance. "It's lovely. But do you have anything a bit smaller in size?" "Something more fitted for her frame?" he asked thoughtfully. The shopkeeper nodded enthusiastically. "Let me check in the back for something else," she said before disappearing. As Lily waited, her eyes wandered to a sparkling blue necklace displayed on the counter. She stepped closer, her breath catching slightly. "That gem," she thought, "it's the same shade as his eyes." Her gaze lingered, her mind wandering until Ortiz approached her from behind. "Were you interested in that necklace?" he asked, his voice light but tinged with curiosity. Lily jolted in surprise and quickly shook her head, her cheeks tinged pink. No, you see, I just happened to notice it. That's all." Her voice was nervous, almost defensive. Ortiz tilted his head, unconvinced by her response. "We'll purchase it." Lily's eyes widened, and she began to panic. "You don't have to do that. Really, it just caught my eye for a moment." "I wasn't serious about it," she stammered. Ortiz's gaze softened as he interrupted her with calm assurance. "It's important to have things you like. Wearing something that brings you happiness will make you feel more confident at the ball. And that's what truly matters, Lily." As Ortiz gently brushed Lily's hair, her cheeks turned pink. He smiled softly and said, "This necklace should suit you perfectly." With that, he carefully placed the shimmering blue necklace around her neck. The color matched her eyes beautifully, making her blush even more. "It suits you perfectly," he said, his tone full of admiration. Lily looked down, bashful, but Ortiz's warm smile reassured her. "We bought quite a bit, didn't we?" "Are you tired, Lily?" he asked kindly. Lily shook her head quickly, yet, in her mind, she thought about how different her life had become. She used to run errands often when she was a slave, but this is the first time she's had so much fun shopping. It feels so nice. Just then, a voice called her name sharply. Startled, she turned around and froze. It was her former master, Macbeth, glaring at her. Macbeth's tone was harsh as he sneered, "What are you wasting time for? Come here. We're going home." Panic washed over Lily. Her body stiffened, her hands trembled, and memories of her past filled her mind. Before she could even step back, Ortiz stepped protectively in front of her. His calm but firm voice cut through the tension. "Please take your leave," he said coldly. Macbeth's eyes narrowed as he scoffed, "Who do you think you are? She belongs to me. She's my property. Give her back this instant." Ortiz remained unwavering. "She is not a possession," he said. As Macbeth glared with fury, his hands trembling, he barked, "She's my slave. I bought her. I have every right to take her back." Otis stood calm and unwavering. He glanced at Lily and gently asked, "Lily, what do you want to do?" Lily's trembling body froze momentarily. Her mind was a whirlwind of fear and determination. She thought of all the times Otis had asked her how she felt, how he respected her choices and valued her opinions. For the first time, she realized she didn't want to live in fear anymore. Taking a deep, trembling breath, she looked up with newfound courage and firmly said, "I will never return to you." Macbeth's face twisted with rage. "How dare you talk back to me?" He stepped toward Lily, his hand raised threateningly. But before he could get any closer, Otis intervened. In one swift motion, Otis caught Macbeth's arm midair. Otis's voice turned cold, deadly, and commanding. "You seem unaware of the laws in this country, so let me enlighten you. Here, human trafficking is illegal. Furthermore, with the inhumane treatment you inflicted on her, do you have any idea how many crimes would come to light under investigation?" His grip on Macbeth's arm tightened briefly, sending a clear warning. Macbeth flinched, fear flickering in his eyes. Pulling his arm back with a shudder, he took a step away. Still, he couldn't resist snarling his parting words, "You will regret this. You'll be sorry for crossing me." As Macbeth stormed off in a fit of frustration, Otis turned his attention back to Lily. His expression softened immediately. "Are you all right?" he asked, his tone now filled with care and concern. Lily stood there, looking at Macbeth's retreating form. The man who had once controlled every aspect of her life, the man she used to fear above all else, now seemed so small, so weak. Otis silently observed her reaction and thought, "She'll be just fine. Lily has strength in her, more than she realizes. He knows she'll find her own way and pursue her dreams of her own free will." In the next scene, we see Lily preparing for the grand ball. Otis entered the room and asked gently, "Lily, are you ready for the ball?" Lily turned to face him, dressed in a beautiful gown that shimmered like starlight. Otis's gaze softened as he took in her appearance, his voice full of admiration. "You look beautiful," he said sincerely. Lily's cheeks flushed a light pink, and she smiled shyly. As they approached the grand hall doors, Lily hesitated, her nerves beginning to overtake her. Her palms were clammy, and her heart pounded in her chest. "It's finally time for the ball," she thought, panicking internally. Sensing her unease, Otis gently placed his hand over hers, grounding her. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I'm here with you. Everything will be fine." His reassurance eased her tension, and she nodded gratefully. "Right," she said with a deep breath. Taking her hand, Otis smiled warmly and said, "We've come this far. Let's enjoy ourselves." The grand doors creaked open, revealing the breathtaking sight of the ballroom. Glittering chandeliers adorned the ceilings, and the hall was filled with elegant nobles laughing and dancing to enchanting music. Lily's eyes widened in awe. "So this is a real ball," she thought, overwhelmed by its beauty. "It's exactly like the dreams she had as a child." "Oh, Sir Otis has arrived," one noblewoman whispered excitedly. "And look, he brought a young lady by his side," another remarked, intrigued. As Lily hesitantly took in her surroundings, a familiar voice called out warmly, "Welcome to the Revel Ball." Lily turned to see Lady Scarlet approaching with a graceful smile. "I must apologize for keeping you waiting," Lady Scarlet said, her presence commanding attention. As Lily nervously adjusted her posture, Lady Scarlet approached them with her graceful smile. "Good evening, Sir Ortiz," she said warmly, before turning her gaze to Lily. "Ah, Miss Lily, you're here as well. My apologies, I hardly noticed your presence. It's as if you blend so seamlessly into the surroundings." Lily flushed but quickly bowed politely. "Not at all, Lady Scarlet. I'm glad we could meet again." "Thank you very much for inviting us here tonight," she said with a faint smile. Lady Scarlet studied her for a moment, her expression unreadable, before replying, "I'm pleased to hear that. I didn't offend you." She gestured elegantly toward the hall. "Please, enjoy yourself tonight. It is my hope that you'll come to love these grand festivities as much as I do." Lady Scarlet observed Lily and thought to herself, "It seems she has finally learned the proper way to bow. But that's too bad." Her expression remained unreadable as she turned.
as a man suddenly approached to Sir Otis.
Sir Otis addressed him respectfully.
"Lord Beat, my apologies for the inconvenience caused to your daughter regarding the dance lessons," he said politely before the conversation could continue. Another man approached Lily with a smile. Bowing with a polite smile.
"Please excuse me, Miss Lily," he began.
"May I have the honor of this dance?"
Lily froze. Panic coursed through her veins as her mind raced.
A dance.
She knew she would have to dance at the ball, she thought.
But with a strange man?
Her body trembled, and her hands shook visibly. Lady Scarlet stepped closer, her tone matter-of-fact.
"Miss Lily," she said firmly, "it is rude to refuse a gentleman's invitation to dance at a ball.
If you do, it might harm your reputation and ours as well."
Lily's heart sank. She gulped and nodded hesitantly.
She cannot bring shame to Sir Ortiz or Lady Scarlet. She must accept, she thought. With trembling hands, she allowed the man to take her hand. The man, blessing Lily with a warm smile, thanked her graciously for accepting his invitation to dance. He held her hand gently as they moved onto the ballroom floor. From afar, Sir Otis observed quietly, his brow slightly furrowed with concern. It's good that she's facing this, he thought, but he can tell she's still scared of other men. Lady Scarlet, watching from the sidelines, approached Sir Otis with a graceful air and said firmly, "Sir Otis, I suggest you dance with her after this."
Otis glanced at her, unsure.
But before he could respond, Lady Scarlet continued, "It will put her at ease. She clearly needs someone familiar to guide her through this overwhelming night."
Otis nodded reluctantly, knowing Lady Scarlet's suggestion was wise, though he still felt uneasy seeing Lily trembling as she moved stiffly with her dance partner.
Music filled the grand ballroom, and the other guests danced elegantly across the floor. Lily desperately tried to focus. "It's okay," she thought, repeating it over and over to herself.
"He's not Macbeth. It'll be fine." But in the next moment, Lily accidentally stepped on her partner's foot. She gasped in horror and said tremblingly, I am so sorry."
The man chuckled kindly, his tone patient.
"It's all right, Miss Lily. Don't worry about it."
However, whispers from the crowd at the edges of the ballroom were less forgiving.
Some onlookers laughed softly among themselves.
"Look at her timing, her form," one guest sneered.
"There are no words for how awful it is."
Lady Scarlet, watching nearby, noticed the judgmental stares and Lily's struggles. She smirked lightly to herself, pride flickering in her eyes.
"She looks absolutely pitiful next to me," she thought.
A group of noble ladies in the corner whispered among themselves.
"But look at Lady Scarlet. Just look at the way she dances, elegance incarnate." Lady Scarlet internally laughed.
"And that's why I always win," she thought. At the end of the song, "That was a wonderful dance, wasn't it?" she said with a thin smile.
The man released Lily's hand, bowing slightly.
"Thank you very much for the dance, Miss Lily," he said, his tone kind but tinged with concern. "You were lovely, Miss Lily," he said with sincerity.
"Are you okay? You seemed a little nervous." "It's perfectly understandable for your first time at a ball."
Blushing, he added softly, "Still, I had a lot of fun."
"Thank you." Lily blinked in surprise at the unexpected compliment, but before she could respond, Otis approached quickly.
"I'm sorry for interrupting," he said curtly.
"She hasn't been feeling well. I think it would be best if she took a moment to rest." The man nodded politely.
"Of course."
Otis gently led Lily away, asking quietly, "Are you all right?"
Outside the ballroom, under the cool night sky, Otis glanced at Lily, his expression a mixture of worry and guilt.
"Have you calmed down a bit?" he asked. "I'm sorry. Maybe it was too early to bring you to the ball. Shall we head back home?" As Lily smiled softly, she said, "I danced with him until the end of the waltz."
Ortiz observed her with admiration, a protective warmth rising in his heart. He thought he needed to protect her forever, he mused.
"But that's not right." Lily has been fighting for herself all along. What an incredibly strong woman.
Ortiz leaned closer, his kind expression drawing Lily's attention.
Did you have fun during your first dance?
Lily hesitated for a moment, shyly responding, "Oh."
She was so flustered that she didn't really think about having fun. Ortiz chuckled lightly. Then, he said, offering her his hand, "Shall we try again? Miss Lily, will you accept my hand for another dance?"
Blushing, Lily hesitated before gently placing her hand in his. As they began to dance gracefully across the floor, the noble onlookers turned their attention to the pair, whispering in awe. "Oh my, how elegant they look together," one remarked. Lily glanced at Ortiz, her panic slowly fading as she followed his lead. When she's with him, she's not afraid, she thought.
He's always been there to help her.
Finally, she found her voice, her gratitude spilling forth. "Thank you for everything you've done for me," she said softly.
Ortiz's gaze softened as he asked, "Will you call me by my name? It feels like you've been avoiding it this whole time."
Lily flushed, realizing he had noticed her hesitation. In her heart, she understood it was because she used to be a slave and had no idea how to address someone like him, someone so kind yet so different in status.
Ortiz smiled gently, sensing her struggle.
"Lily, you're no longer a slave.
Please, don't limit yourself anymore."
Taking a deep breath, Lily finally whispered his name with a shy smile, "Ortiz." Ortiz grinned broadly in response, his joy evident. They continued their dance, their movements fluid and natural. Noble ladies murmured in admiration, "They're so captivating together. What a beautiful pair."
Ortiz leaned toward Lily. "They're complimenting you, Lily."
"You're dancing beautifully," he said, which caused her to blush even more. As the music continued, Lady Scarlet approached them, her expression poised yet sharp. "Miss Lily," she said, "I'm surprised to see you dancing so well.
You've come such a long way." Lily smiled politely and replied, "Thank you very much, Lady Scarlet."
However, Lady Scarlet's lips twisted into a smirk as she added, "Don't you think your dancing style is a little old-fashioned? Perhaps your teacher isn't aware of the latest trends." Ortiz narrowed his eyes. "I am her teacher," he said firmly. Lady Scarlet blinked in mild surprise, but Lily stepped forward, her voice calm but resolute.
"Sir Ortiz taught me patiently. He made it easy for a beginner like me to understand. I'm very grateful to him."
Lady Scarlet felt a flicker of shock.
Did she just talk back to me? Scarlet thought. Lily continued with confidence.
"For what it's worth, Professor Elizabeth also praised our style."
Scarlet's expression froze as the name registered.
"Elizabeth Watson," she muttered in disbelief. Elizabeth was highly respected in high society, known as the premier tutor for accomplished dancers.
Ortiz leaned toward Scarlet. "If our dance didn't suit your taste, that's unfortunate.
But this occasion is a bit much for Lily, so we'll be taking our leave."
Lady Scarlet said, "No, you see, that was quite the achievement."
Scarlet could only stand in stunned silence as Ortiz took Lily's hand and led her toward the exit.
"Lily," he said kindly, "shall we go home?" Lily nodded.
But as they neared the grand doors, a rumbling noise echoed through the hall. The crowd gasped and panicked as a fierce beast burst through the window, howling ferociously. Screams erupted as nobles scattered in fear. Ortiz immediately moved to protect Lily, drawing her close.
"What is this?" he thought urgently. "Why has a beast come here?" Amid the chaos, Lily was separated from Ortiz as the crowd pushed her further into the hall.
She stumbled, her breath quickening as fear gripped her. She turned, her eyes locking onto the monstrous beast that now stood directly in front of her and Lady Scarlet.
Lady Scarlet froze, trembling in fear. "No," she whispered. "This can't be happening."
But before the beast could strike Scarlet, Scarlet pushed Lily forward and drawing the beast's attention.